when you work for somebody that believes, right? Or you work with people who are passionate, right? That's infectious, right? And it's funny to say that in a healthcare job, but it builds people. It's the glue that binds people, right?
Yeah.
If you see somebody who has the best intentions, they drive hard and are the utmost ethics and the highest, like that's somebody I would follow, right? And it's infectious and it drives people and I leverage him. I do a lot more of the selling to people and hiring people. But I leverage that when I talk to people. I'm like, when you meet him, you will understand quickly this is where he wants to be.
Welcome to the Risk Never Sleeps podcast, in which we talk to the folks that are on the front lines protecting patient safety and delivering patient care. My name is Ed Gaudet. I'm the host of the program, and today I am joined by Mike DeRizzo. Did I get that pronunciation right?
You know what? You good enough, close enough. It's DeRizzo.
Okay.
That's close enough.
Right. Mike DeRizzo. Welcome, Mike, Executive Director of Security and GRC at Wellstar.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I'm happy to have you here. I love your background. Love to drill into learning more about what you've been doing over the last couple of years. So why don't we start off with your current role and tell us about the organization you're in.
Sure. So Wellstar Health System is one of the larger healthcare providers in the state of Georgia. We do a wonderful job. We're based out of Marietta. We've got 9 hospitals, and recently in September this year, we acquired Augusta Health System. So that number goes to 12. We're building 2 more hospitals in the next 2 years. So we'll go to 14, probably about 180 ambulatory centers. So 28,000 employees, plus another 6,500 out of Augusta Health. So WMCG now, which is what it's called now. So a lot of great work. We're a top to bottom, front to end, ambulatory, retirement communities and things like that. We have our own radiation oncology, which is unique for a hospital. Usually that's outsourced to a third party, but we actually do that internally. And we have a lot of fantastic people who help good people. We're a nonprofit healthcare provider. So every dollar we get gets reinvested into the community, into the people we serve. So we've got a lot of great things and we do a lot of stuff, and I'm an honored to be a part of the team.
That's terrific. So small job.
Yeah, just a small job, right?
So what's a typical month look like for you? What do you focus on? Yeah. No typical months.
So there's another executive director who owns security operations and digital forensics and incident response, DFIR. So I own everything except that. And usually well, what does that mean? And it's like, well, it's governance, risk, and compliance, and then vulnerability management, penetration testing, project management, business continuity, and then, staffing and information security projects, right? So my job generally involves getting involved with IT and with operations and with people, answering questions like, how do we do this? How can we do this? How can we do this safely and securely and keep our patients' data and information safe? How do we protect our people, our team members? Right? That's a very important task that people in healthcare forget, because, we focus on the patients and privacy. It's like, I got to protect my team members, right? I want to make sure that they're protected. So a common month is, review of what's incoming. So what are the emerging threats? And that's working in conjunction with my peer over on the security operations side for threat intel. So what are the threat actors leveraging? And then what do we see from a vulnerability perspective? What are the tools and products that are causing potential challenges, 0 days, and that's not just at a computer level, that's also applications, mobile devices, industrial control systems, things like that. So a lot of it is paying attention and reading about the things that are incoming, right? So CISA does a great job of publishing. Health ISAC does another great job of publishing these emerging threats and things like that. So that's part of it. The other part of it is meeting with, other operational teams around. So I meet with IT weekly and we discuss, what do you need help with? What do I need help with? Where are we at? What are the projects look like? So merger and acquisitions, I literally just got off the call of merger and acquisitions. Because we're a large healthcare provider, we do move around and acquire other businesses and merge with other businesses. So this is an ongoing thing that never goes away. And then it's team growth, right? So the most important part is making sure my team has everything, right? So on any given week, I have at least 3 or 4 one-on-ones with team members, not just my direct supervisors that report up to me, but their team members as well, right? I want to understand what they're going through, what they're feeling, how they're managing their goals and days, and what, you don't quit bad jobs, you quit bad bosses, right? And I mean, that's, there are times you quit bad jobs. Like, let's be honest.
No, but you're right. Actually, yeah, you never leave a job, you leave a boss or typically.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have a good boss and a terrible job. You're like, I'll
grind it
show up, but
Yeah.
hey, I need you to know that this ain't the best job in the world. And that happens, right? Every job has its challenges and everything. But if you have somebody who's helping you get through it, makes all the difference. So I try to be that for my people. When I interview you and you start, one of the questions I ask is, this may be the last company you work for, but this is not your last job. What do you want your next job to be and how can I help you get there? Because if this is a journey for you, I want to be an involved, invested part of that journey so that we can grow you. We can be happy if you're challenged appropriately, if you're paid appropriately and you're well paid, you're not going anywhere, right? Like, hey, I'm growing here. So I talked to somebody today who's in charge of our application security program. I said, I want you to know that I'm counting on you to grow out this operation, right? So I want this to be a resume builder for you. Not that I want you to go anywhere, but I want you to look back and be like, I don't want people to look back and go, I didn't do anything at this job. I didn't do anything at this company that kind of moved the needle for me. It was the same. It was a carbon copy of the last job. Like, no. This job is, I built this. I executed on this. I hired these people. I was involved in growth. I managed X, Y, and Z. And you could go, this was a great job, right? And I hope people move on, right? And so the two things that drive me as a human being are help people, right? Even if it's, and that could be single serving, right? You meet somebody in an airport and they just tell you their problems. And you walk through them, you talk through them, or it's helping build out a career or helping somebody get through something. And then the second part of that, of filling my soul, is solving problems. I love a good problem solving, right? And it's exciting to me. You sit down either by yourself or with a group of people and you collaborate and say, all right, what are your challenges? What are your use cases? What do we need to solve for? And that's exciting to me, right? That fulfills my soul. I can work almost any job, but right now cybersecurity is one of the most difficult problem solving things, right? It's not just how do I protect the company? How do I protect the company and still let the company do what they need to do? Right? Because, all of us are like, hey, I'm a security guy. We lock it in a box and bury it at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah. It's safe. And you're like, yeah, but it's unusable.
That's right.
So how do we meet? Yeah. How do we meet the two of those? So those are what.
No, we share a lot of things in common. And you're so right. Getting that balance between enforcing proper controls and enabling the business is so important. And if you don't do both, you have an imbalance and you've got to understand the business and the needs of the business. And it sounds like you spend a lot of time doing that, which is great. How did you get into healthcare?
So, my boss, whom I worked with previously, worked in healthcare prior to this. So he and I worked at a security consulting firm. He owned the managed security side of things. Great human being, great person to learn under it's one of those people in your life that's a mentor, right? And I need to know what that guy knows or that person knows. And I and if it's like, and he called me, I just lost my job and, he called me and he goes, hey, I need you to come and rebuild GRC for me. And I was like, that's awesome. Who called you? And he goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, you don't know, I just got let go. And he's like, oh, well, I guess you could start pretty soon. And I was like, absolutely. So that's how I got into healthcare. But he really kind of influenced that. And his standpoint is a very smart guy. He can do this job for any company in the world, any of the largest companies in the world. He could certainly do it. He's got a great reputation. He's like, I like healthcare because, I'm not a doctor. I've never went to medical school, but I can help protect people with the knowledge that I have. Right. And he's one of the brightest individuals and most modest people you ever meet, but he really could do it anywhere. And he's like, you want to do this. And if you're looking to help and you're looking to make a difference, this is where you can make a difference is in healthcare. And I was like, right?
It sounds like that shared mission is important to him.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
When you work for somebody that believes, right? Or you work with people who are passionate, right? That's infectious, right? And it's funny to say that in a healthcare job, but it builds people. It's the glue that binds people, right?
Yeah.
If you see somebody who has the best intentions, they drive hard and are the utmost ethics and the highest, like that's somebody I would follow, right? And it's infectious and it drives people and I leverage him. I do a lot more of the selling to people and hiring people. But I leverage that when I talk to people. I'm like, when you meet him, you will understand quickly, this is where he wants to be. It's not where he is right now. He's one of those people like, I want to be here. I want to be here and solve problems and be a part of the solution.
Yeah. And I love your background. You spent time on the vendor side with GE. How has that helped you working now on the provider side?
One of the first few things I'd tell vendors is 3 years ago, I was on your side of the table. I was a value-added reseller. I worked with products. I sold a lot of this. I sold a lot of that. I've worked with clients to build things out. From a provider perspective, it helps to build partnerships.
Yeah.
Right. And it's when I talk to vendors, they're like, I can see you're very transparent about that. And I was like, well, in healthcare, if I don't tell you where it hurts, if I'm not transparent with you and tell you where it hurts, you can't fix it.
Right.
If I don't tell you where my journey plans on going, like, hey, I want to lose 30 pounds, like you're not going to help me understand how to lose 30 pounds. So if I tell you where I'm going from a provider perspective in IT and technology, you can be a part of that journey. Right. And so, or, as you develop things, right. And I try to meet as many people as I can. So my peers and everything, as we have these conversations and we talk at conferences or just, check in with each other every once in a while, like, what are you working on? Well, I'm working on this. And you're like, what solutions have you found? Like, I haven't found any. You're like, I bet so-and-so could solve that. And I go and I have a conversation with that vendor and say, hey, look, there's a few of us that are talking about X, Y, and D. Software bill of materials, for example, right? This is an important thing to us. And so I talk to some of my partners and vendors and say, look, this is where we want to go. This is what we're looking at. We're tired of being blindsided by things. We want an easy way to check in on things to say, do I have Move It in my system? Do I have WebP? Do I have all this stuff? I want to be able to get to it as quickly as I can. And so having that transparency with that helps. The other side of it is that I was a consultant prior to this. So, having that consultative mentality where it's like, there's a solution here somewhere. And sometimes, the question or the problem that you're trying to solve, you can't find a solution for. So you change the problem. Right. And it's like, well, okay, this is what you came to me with. What is it you actually need? Well, I need to get from here to here. And you're like, doesn't matter how you get there. And you're like, well, I want it to be in style. And you're like, okay, well, short of being in style, is there any way you care to get from point A to point B? And they're like, no, I just need it to be secure. I can solve for that. Right. How about this solution? They're like, that works. And you play the go find me a rock game or bake me a cake game, depending on what sales solution you have. But that's kind of what it is. And from a provider perspective, that's useful, right? You deal with very smart, intense people that are really trying to save lives or improve healthcare. And they're very smart people. Don't get me wrong. And sometimes, it's like, I'm a smart person. I know a lot about technology. I don't know anything about being a phlebotomist, right? I've had blood drawn plenty of time in my life. I couldn't tell you how to do it or why they do it and why they do certain things and anything else. So, it's understanding that we all come at this from smart ways. There's different directions. So how do I meet on that end? And from a consultative standpoint, I think that's probably been the best thing that's been for me in my career is understanding that come at it from this direction at this angle that a solution can be found. Maybe it's just not the question that we're looking for.
Yeah. And that combination of empathy and shared mission really seems to be working very well for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it does.
It's helpful for everybody that's involved because you're right. It takes an ecosystem to deliver care. And if you treat vendors like they're not partners, then I think that's where the disconnect typically happens. So I love that. As you think about the next couple of years, what are your top 3 priorities?
So artificial intelligence, right? And it's how do we manage with this, right? So we look back at the journey 10, 15 years ago, the cloud, right? Everybody, oh, the cloud is out. Well, what is the cloud? Like, it's just a computer plugged in somewhere else. And that's what it was back then.
Right.
Now it's evolved into this big thing and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? If you tell me we're not in the cloud, you're like, you've got shadow IT. And that's the end of that conversation. Like
exactly.
you're in the cloud.
Buddy.
You are in the cloud, whether you know it or not, but your company is actively working in the cloud.
That's right.
So artificial intelligence is just another path on that journey, right? Here's where it is. It's, and I led a discussion at Health ISAC recently about artificial intelligence. We had that quote from Jurassic Park. You guys spend all this time and energy, and I don't know the quote word for word, but you spent all this time and energy thinking, how can we do this? When you didn't stop and think, should we do this?
Yes.
There's a lot of that going on, right? I can apply all these solutions to this. And you're like, I don't think that's a good solution to apply. And here's the reasons why. No one wants to be told no. We all want to be told, that sounds great, keep going, right? And so that's kind of how we have to lead this conversation, right? It's not stop doing that. We don't want to be the NO police. We want to be the KNOW police. We still want to know about it, and we want to direct the traffic appropriately, right? Now you're talking martial arts, right? You're not stopping a fist somebody throws at you. You're redirecting the energy for it, right? And you're managing that energy appropriately. That's one of the big things I'm working on is, where is this energy coming from? How is that energy being used? How is artificial intelligence being used? And how can I direct it in an appropriate manner that's successful for us, the patient, the practitioners, everybody? So I'm a firm believer in the win-win all the way around.
Love that.
So that's the first one.
Okay. You have more?
Oh no, we always have more,
Yeah.
right? So the second one is
before you
literally
go to the second one, I have a question about
Yeah.
AI. So many of our customers have formed AI governance committees that are cross-functional, include obviously the business, the clinicians, IT, et cetera. Have you started down that journey yet on the governance side?
We have.
Committee? You have. Okay.
Yeah, so we have
great.
software development in that.
Yeah.
We have compliance, so that's our chief privacy officer.
Yeah.
We have the health information management team. We've pulled all these people in. They're very smart people, and they're approaching AI from different solution bases, right? Or protecting AI from different directions, right? The chief privacy officer, she's mainly concerned with how do I make sure that we don't put the data sets, and this is always a big concern, is we don't put two data sets that shouldn't be together in the same bucket, right? That you don't create this picture. And quite frankly, a lot of people have questions about, like, I don't understand. That doesn't make sense. Can you explain it? Like, absolutely. Let me give you a real quick scenario. You have two patients. One patient has great insurance, health insurance. Another patient has terrible or no health insurance. Both patients have the same problem, the same healthcare issues and everything else. What you never want to have happen is a doctor to go, which one of these two has a better chance of survival because they have the better health insurance? Hey, that's a terrible scenario to be in.
Yeah.
So those kinds of data sets, maybe you don't want together because it may skew a doctor's effort, right? Even unconsciously, it may skew someone's effort in protecting that person. So that's just a prime example of what we're trying to do to avoid.
Have you thought about how do you manage an existing vendor where you may have had a contract in place for a couple of years, and they start bringing AI in through updates, et cetera? How are you dealing with that? That to me is
So Microsoft, Google and Microsoft, right? Google Bard, Microsoft Copilot. These are things. So Microsoft, there was an easy way to do that. We signed up for the internal enterprise because we had an enterprise agreement. And so everybody who logs in with my company's email account, like where they're logging with their user, they get logged into a centralized internal only version of Copilot or Bing, right? So that's great. That's easy. Google's a little bit more difficult because we don't have a Google enterprise account. There may be, hey, you can use Bard to do that. And Bard's baked into the Google Chrome search bar. And you're like, ooh, okay. So we are revisiting that, right? We are like understanding a lot of it is just awareness, right? And just letting our team members know, like, here's why this is a bad idea. I know it's tempting. It sounds great, but here's why you got to be careful. You have to look out for this, be aware of this, be cognizant of the challenges that this may create, right? Put it in terms of your information out there, right? You wouldn't want somebody to know that you had X, Y, and Z, right? They used to say, you wouldn't want to see it in the front cover of the Washington Times or the New York Post. So don't put it in a place that could be exposed or generally used, because these are evolving data sets,
That's
right?
great.
Think of MySpace and Facebook 15 years ago,
Right.
right? Everybody's like,
My who?
right, yeah, I know. Yeah, dated.
No,
I
but
just dated myself.
yeah, the point is though, these vendors, they come and go, right? So,
Right.
you got to be really careful who you trust your data with.
And we're seeing things like in contracts, right? Where you get a discount from a vendor and they're like, well, here's what we're asking for in return. You're like, all right, give it to me. And it's like, well, you can't share this data set with any other vendor because they want to build out their AI modeling, their large language model on your data, and they're giving you a discount for it, but you can't share that data set with another LLM. And you're like, well, we're already in breach of contract because I guarantee you that, to your point, Ed, there's other vendors out there who are using our data sets, right? And so, that's another challenge. It's just like, no. So we have to be cognizant of contracts.
Priority 2.
So software bill of materials. I mentioned it already. How do I understand the evolving landscape of what this is, right? So it's no longer, hey, the problem is your Google Chrome browser hasn't been, has a 0 day, right? It came out last couple of days. It's a component within the Google Chrome. And you're like, ooh, I don't know if we're using that. Right? And I had a conversation with the company and I said, hey, we're getting this vulnerability. It's showing up on our scanner. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, here's the directory path for this jar file. And they're like, we've never seen that before. And you're like, it's in your install directory. Like you can see it says software, name of software company, name of application /install. And it's in your install directory. And they're like, yeah, we're going to have to get back to you on that one.
Oh, man.
This isn't a small company.
Right.
This is a very large company that lots of organizations outside of healthcare, including, use. And I won't dime them out because they're still figuring out this problem. But it's like, we can see this. And they're like, oh, yeah, about that. We don't know.
About that.
So, yeah, about that. So, that's software bill of materials is a big thing. One of the conversations I've had with my peers is, how far do you go? Right? When is far enough? And you're like, ugh. I'm legally required to publish that 2 layers down. I don't use it. What if it's 3 layers down and it's easy to hit? And you're like, I see where this is going. How far is enough? So I'm working with some vendors and some products that are kind of doing this, and we're investing in organizations that kind of do this. So, again, it's an evolving landscape, right? It's just coming out there. So the third priority is biomedical, right? So in October, the Patch Act went into effect.
Right.
And so the FDA has published reports that says thou shalt keep security up and running for your product. It's a collective problem. It's not their problem. It's not her problem. It's not his problem. It's all of our problem. So manufacturer, you need to help out, right? You can't just say, you know what, we're just going to stay here on MySQL version 5 for forever and ever, even though it's been unsupported for 5 years. You're like, you can't do that anymore.
It's a blast of the past.
I wish I was kidding, Ed. Like, I really wish I was
I
kidding.
know. I've seen it. No, Windows 95.
And so you go to these people and they're like, yeah, we're not going to update this. And you're like, okay, I'm going to provide you with 2 things that are not going to make you happy. And my next step is to start having conversations with people that are going to make your life very difficult. And they're like, whoa. And you're like, no, like if you're doing that to me, what are you doing to the small companies? Exactly. Right? What are you doing to the small mom and pop shops who are just like, you're going to go to another vendor? There's no other solution out there. And that's why these companies are kind of, they've had a stranglehold on there, right? There's 2, radiation oncology products out there that are the 2 main ones used. And you're like, because all the other ones can't afford to get licensed by the FDA. So, what we say goes, and you're like, okay, what if I turn the FDA against you? And they're like, you wouldn't do that. And we're like, I will, to protect my patients.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where we are today. That's the third big one is, and I want to be partners with and I've told these manufacturers, I'm like, I want to be a good partner. I had one manufacturer who didn't have policies, and they didn't have policies. Wow. And I'm like, I will write your policies for you.
That's a good partner.
I mean, honestly, I told their VP of sales, I'm like, hear me out. I will give you canned policies and help you complete these. Cause they were like, we're getting high trust certified. And then 5 minutes later, they tell me they don't have policies. And I'm like, there's no way you're going to get high trust certified, my friend. Like you lost out of the gate. So it's managing with these new expectations and fixing this and living in the new world, right? It's not just, well, you have Microsoft and we're going to own you. But you have this tiny little component. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called, Move It. And you're like, I have heard of that. It's an open source tool, or it's a component of this X, Y, and Z. And that's how I'm going to overcome your security operations.
Yeah. And certificates are important, but oftentimes people hide behind them. How do you get around that?
So we have that honest conversation, right? Hey, you have your high trust certified, your SOC 2 type 2 certified. And a lot of times my peers will be like, oh, they got a SOC 2 type 2. We'll just take it. And you're like, did you read what that covers?
Yeah.
Right. Because I've had companies go, I've got a SOC 2 type 2. Like, great. Let me see it. And they're like, you need an NDA. I'm like, I'll get you an NDA. Here's your NDA. Let me see it. And they're like, here you go. And you read it and you're like, this has nothing to do with the product or services you're selling.
Oh my God.
Are you aware of that? And they're like, yeah, but they can be applied to everything. And I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't fly.
Yeah.
Like your operations over here in India are not the same operations in Argentina or Mexico.
Right.
Like that doesn't fly.
Exactly.
So, we ask the questions, right? So we leverage a vendor risk management platform, much like, your company. And we ask those questions and honestly, you have to ask the questions. They can fill out a questionnaire.
Yeah.
A 30-minute conversation, you can start to smell, right? As my friend Eric Zinn will say, it's a faint waft of sewage. And you're like,
a faint waft of sewage. I love that. I love that.
Oh,
I gotta remember
that was sharp and poignant and unpleasant. Let's dig down a little deeper into that area.
That's great. So tough couple of years with the pandemic. What are you most proud of personally and professionally?
I went from driving about 10,000 miles a month to a grinding hold of never leaving my house except for flying every other month down to headquarters. I'm proud of the team members that I've left behind at the former organization I worked with that adapted. For the first year of the pandemic, as a security services branch in the we were busier than ever, right? You had people going, I don't have a business continuity plan. And literally I had a pharmaceutical company right before the pandemic, like, you need a business continuity plan. We're like, yeah, we were told we kind of needed one, and why do we need this? And I was like, well, there are lots of reasons. And I listed global pandemic as one of them. And the guy who works for a pharmaceutical company was like, a global pandemic, really? And I was like, well, there's the bird flu, the avian flu and the swine flu, and these things could get bad. 2 months later, Ed, he calls me and he goes,
make it up.
You did you bring this on us? And I was
hope
like,
you played the lottery after that.
Right. I probably should have. So, but there were challenges like this as that surface attack area for many of these companies extended basically to the user's home, right? Is all their smart smart home stuff at their house up to date? Is their router up to date? When was the last time you got a router from Verizon or Comcast?
When was the last time you bought VPNs en masse?
Right. So that was fun. Like, hey, you couldn't sell Zoom licenses fast enough, right? Oh my gosh! For all these education people, they're like, I need Zoom. What's Zoom? And they're like, oh, you don't like WebEx. We were giving WebEx licenses away for free. Right. Just so people could get in and settle in, because we had no idea how long it was be down. So you fast forward to a healthcare company during a pandemic, right? So a year into it, I'm now an healthcare provider, and I'm a remote employee. All my employees are remote, and we're navigating. So you start a new job in a leadership position. You've never met these people. You've never met your peers. I think how we adapted, and let's be clear, human beings are one of the few creatures on this planet you'll find on every 7 continents, right? We are highly adaptable, from negative 40 degrees to 125, 130 degrees in the desert. We are highly adaptable creatures that can deal with high levels of stress, right? It was amazing to see that in action, and unfortunately be a part of an active participant in it. But I was proud of the people I worked with who just dealt with it, right? And they'd come to you with problems like, I need this hardware piece to work forever. And you're like, all right, let's see what we can do.
PPE developed on a 3D printer, like the ingenuity and innovation that was that came out of that was incredible.
Yeah. Is it necessity is the mother of invention, right?
That's right. Oh, Frank Zappa reference there, mothers of
There you
invention.
go.
Very nice.
There you go.
Okay, let's get into it. Outside of healthcare and IT, what would you be doing? What are you most passionate about?
Yeah, I do like music. But I'm terrible at it. I'm an awful musician. I want to be passionate about it. I kind of think of Sherlock Holmes playing violin, right? Like he's just terrible at it, but he puts his heart and soul in it because it helps him think and relax.
Yeah.
I'd like to do a little bit more of that. I have a children's story. I know that's bizarre, but I have a children's story in my head that's been there for 15 years that I've been
Nice.
cultivating that I'd love to publish and get out there.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but at the end of the day, if you ask the question like, hey, if you won the lottery, what would you be doing?
Yeah.
Right? I'd still help people. Right. I'd have some kind of organization that provided help for somebody on some level or something. Um, it feeds my soul, right? And I've met people who have all the money in the world, or all this and that and the other thing, and they haven't tapped into the what feeds your soul to wake up in the morning and get up early and do things and reach out to people and be uncomfortable, right? Like if you learn to embrace being uncomfortable,
Embrace your
that's a
dread.
human being that is unlimited potential.
It's the Buddhist way.
Right?
Embrace your dread. Yeah.
Absolutely. Embrace your
Love it.
dread. That's a fantastic state of mind.
Yeah.
You don't grow as a human being unless you're challenged.
That's right.
So, find some way
Okay.
to challenge yourself.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Expressly learn how to be present in the moment, be authentic, right? And I'd like to think I was pretty authentic as a 20-year-old. But be authentic, learn how to be a person, learn how to be part of the world, right? Don't be the person that people want to point at and be like, that guy's cool. Don't stress about that.
I love this.
Right?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? Every morning you wake up, you have the power to choose who you want to be as a human being. Always choose someone who is better than the person you were yesterday.
Choose a good person. Be a good
Choose
person.
a good person.
I love that. I love that.
And am I perfect at it? No. Am I good at it? Some days, right? Like we all have bad days.
Yeah. Man.
But the 20-year-old version of me, didn't have their life together, didn't know what they wanted to be, didn't know what they wanted to do, thought they wanted to do something, crashed and burned a few times. I was working full time and going to school part time, going to college part time. And it's like, don't worry about that. Like get a sense of who you are, meet people, find mentors, mentor people, right? And just be a part of humanity and the collective.
Yeah.
Be happy. Right? Pursue happiness, right? And I think that would have made me earlier. I'm a happy person now. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But be grateful is the other thing. The last thing is embrace gratitude, right? We all have hard lives, right? Every single human being has one thing in their life. They're like, I was overweight, I had psoriasis, I was this, I was that. I was not the right ethnicity. I was not the right person. I was not the right sex. I was not the right this. My parents weren't this. My lineage wasn't like, we all have some kind of burden or demon or something that changes who we are. But having that grateful mindset, right? Like, hey, you know what? I'm grateful for the home that I live in. I'm grateful for the heat that I have during the wintertime and the air conditioning in the summer. I'm grateful to have a job. I'm grateful to have knowledge. Like they can't take my knowledge away from me. I have a bachelor's degree. I have these certificates and stuff. Having that grateful mindset, I think, baselines me, right? It keeps me grounded where it's like, hey man, this could go away in a minute, right? When I was 17 years old, my house burnt down, right, to the foundation. And a week and a half later, I was in a massive car accident, which essentially left me with one pair of underwear, one pair of jeans, and one shirt to my name.
Wow.
And I had just graduated high school. And then 3 months later, I broke a toe in the accident. It's a long story, but I broke a toe in the accident. 3 months later, I had gangrene. I mean, it was a bad year.
Wow.
And, never lose your sense of humor.
Yeah.
Always be grateful and, be present, be authentic.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I would tell my 20-year-old self. It'll get better.
I love that.
It'll get bad. It'll get worse, but it'll also get better.
Love that. So I've got to ask you this question. It's the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. What is the riskiest thing you've ever done, Mike?
The riskiest thing I've ever done, there's different kinds of risks, right? So we've all heard that story that, if your friend jumps off a bridge, would you jump off with them? And the answer is, yes, I have. I've, and so, okay, well, that's a physical risk thing,
Yeah,
right?
so tell me about that. Did you go bungee jumping or?
No. I was a dumb teenager and we
Just literally
we
just jumped off a bridge.
literally just jumped off bridges because it was fun. It was like a 35-foot drop into you don't know what, or a 58-foot drop into you don't know what. And you're like, yeah, whatever. You're 18, you're immortal, right? And dumb.
That's right. Yeah, the combination is beautiful, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful. You the stories you could tell. Every human being is like, yeah, when I was a kid. But there are things like I left General Electric. So I was at GE. I had a decent career there, right? I was 3.5 years in. And I walked away from it to start a security consulting practice for a consulting firm, right? I could have been unemployed in weeks, right? I could have lost everything. And I was making decent money. I wasn't making great money because I, just starting off and everything else. But, I took that chance and, I was a part of building something out with a group of people who are wonderful. Arnold Bell he left GE first, and then I followed him 2 weeks afterwards. And, we built the practice with him. And then Joe, my current boss, joined me, and, we helped build it out even more. And then it was acquired by E+ Technologies. And that was great, right? You built something and it was successful enough that somebody else was willing to pay money for it. That was a risk, right? I could have left. I've been offered jobs while I was there the whole time, right? And I was like, at any point in time, I could have stopped and said, yeah, I'll do this. But I kept doing it. I stayed there for 6 years.
Yeah.
I think the riskiest thing I've done was get complacent. But if I had to ask, it's dangerous, right? It's being complacent, right? Just well, this is my lot in life. This is where I'll stay. Yeah, that's a risk, right? I was at a company called Microsystem Inc. They're owned by Oracle now as a restaurant point of sale, and I traveled a lot, and I lost friendships because I just lost touch with people. Yeah. And I stayed at that job longer than I should have, right? And that because I was complacent. And my wife was like, I want to leave. And so she got a chance to work at a university where she was an alumni from, and we had 13 days to move down to a new area, a new state with area had we knew nobody, and we had very little money, and we made it happen. Yeah. And so, but with that complacency, you think leaving everything behind and moving to a job is the risk. You're like, no, the risk is complacency.
I love that answer. It's unique. Hadn't considered it before. I really love that answer. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, really good. So we talked about being grateful. So now we're going to enter into some of the
the Grateful Dead.
I'm grateful for music. So
there you go.
One of the questions is, you're on a desert island. What are the top 5 albums you'd bring with you?
5 albums.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a tough one.
Oh,
and the easy choice would be greatest hits.
No, you can't do that. No, I'm sorry.
But you can't do that because there's some B-sides.
Right.
You're like, they never made it onto the greatest hits album. It's my favorite song. Right. So, Pearl Jam Versus.
Oh, good.
Dave Matthews.
Oh. You can do live. You can do the Central Park concert.
Yeah, that's a good one. They're like movie soundtracks, right? So Pulp Fiction.
Oh, great movie.
Preacher Man. I mean, it has some great hits on there. So that's 3 right there. George Michael, right? Yeah. I know that's random, but
I love George Michael.
Yeah, so his Ladies and Gentlemen, which is a greatest hits compilation.
Wham? Were you a Wham fan?
Yeah, no,
Wham.
I love Wham. Not my favorite band, but as an artist and appreciation later on in life to see what he did and what he accomplished with Andrew and Wham and all the instruments he played and everything is like, holy cow.
Yeah, very talented.
But just a beautiful vocalist and beautiful songwriter. he would write those songs on a fly.
Yeah.
And there was a documentary where they talked about that. I was like, oh, there are songs in here where you're like, you hear them, you're like, that's an awesome lyric.
Yeah.
And what's the story behind that? You're like, yeah, Michael just wrote that down while he was standing there. He wrote it, he sang it, liked the way it sounded, wrote it down and re-recorded it. And you're like, that's insane.
It's like Style Council. Have you heard of the Style Council?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of that same type of.
Yeah. And so the fifth one, that's a tough one. So there's a lot of different bands that I grew up listening, but it's probably Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Whoa, which album?
It's the one with Fortunate Son.
The Cosmic Factory.
Cosmic. Yeah. So I grew up on that. My mom would play that a lot and everything else. I think that and maybe Led Zeppelin 4 Signs. Right. That's probably
good.
neck and neck. Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And you just listen to him. He's a man.
He's a man.
Now, out of that, Ed, I'd miss out on all the blues that I love listening to, like Howling Wolf and Popper and all those things. I'd miss out on the blues, but I think those are the 5.
Stones or Beatles?
Stones.
Yeah.
Give me Shelter. Give me Shelter. One of my favorite songs to play on guitar.
Me too. That riff is just haunting.
It's just haunting.
Yeah.
It's that
Well, terrific. Yeah, and Keith just had his 80th birthday the other day.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. He's still outliving that Deadpool, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, last question. What advice do you have to kids coming out of school or cyber professionals looking to pursue a career in healthcare?
Be tenacious in what you learn and absorb. Right. So I got into InfoSec indirectly through PCI compliance, which is the credit card compliance stuff about 15, 20 years ago. And it burgeoned into vendor risk management and all these other things, software development. Get out there and do this. I tell students all the time, like, you will know people who you feel are so successful, right? And that they've had of everything and they achieved so much and accomplished so much. Don't pay attention to that. You are the main character in the story of your life. Everyone else's story around you is just an outside character. What do you want your story to be? Right? Worry about your story, right? And it honestly doesn't have to be about success or money or position or title. It's, do you have a wonderful family? Did you create a wonderful family with somebody else? Did you provide for them? Did you find that one person who makes you laugh every day, right? That you could walk the path of life with? Like, don't stress so much about money or things like that. There are plenty of rich people who will tell you it's great. It solves a lot of problems, but it's not the answer, right? And hearing that, like, it solves a lot of problems, but it's not the answer. You're like, what does that even mean? You'll find out later on in life, right? But I would just tell them, like, be tenacious and unending for your absorption of knowledge, right? Never give up. If you want to be in cybersecurity, you can never get up. You never given up reading. It's like being an electrician or an auto mechanic. You're never giving up learning. So if that's not something you're interested in doing or pursuing with just a voracious appetite, maybe this isn't for you, right? Be patient. God bless it, I am not a patient human being. I try so hard sometimes. And some people will go, wow, man, you really handle that well. And you're like, if you only knew the internal screaming in my head right now, that would break glass.
Yeah.
But be patient, not just with other people, but yourself, right? Don't feel like you need to push yourself. Drive yourself, but don't beat yourself up for missing, right? Because failures are how we get better and how we learn.
I love that. And you invoked Walt Whitman O'Meal life. I don't know if you knew that or not.
There you go. Yeah.
That last line, that the powerful play
Walden.
goes on and you may contribute a verse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, and Walden too, as you Walden Pond. That's anyways.
Thoreau.
But Monroe. Thank you.
Thoreau. Thoreau. Yeah.
Thoreau.
Yeah.
Henry Thoreau. Thank you.
Thoreau. Yep.
But yeah, so and it was Immanuel Kant who says, you don't really live life through life. You live life through death.
That's right.
This is finite.
Mm-hmm.
You don't come back again.
Nope.
So make the most of it, right? Take risks. The biggest risk you can take is not taking any risks at all.
Yeah.
Right? We're all going to fail. There are plenty of successful people out there who failed like no tomorrow, right? Abraham Lincoln, Hershey's chocolate. There's so many stories of people who failed. There are so many stories where you hear people succeeding. Like you've never heard of the door slamming in people's faces, right? And it happens constantly to successful people, but they embrace that. They're grateful. They keep pushing. They keep pursuing. Be passionate. Find something you're passionate. Lock onto it. It can be, it can be something you want to do, something you love doing for other people. Don't make it about a person. Don't be passionate about a person, right? Find somebody who can support you and pushes you and challenges you in a positive way. To be a better human being and drive and wants to support your dreams, support other people's dreams as well, right? Be the rock for other people as they are to you. My wife is a wonderful human being who's so patient. She's one of the most patient people in the world because I am just a maniac.
I think we're married to the same woman, by the way.
Yeah. My wife is an amazing human being. And so, she's supportive and everything else. And, she'll tell you like, oh, you're successful. And I'm like, we're successful.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. We're successful together. I've been with people who weren't supportive or anything else. My wife is a supportive person, wonderful human being, and very successful together.
Great way to end the podcast, Mike. Thanks very much for being on today. Really appreciate your advice and your insight. This is Ed Gaudet from the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. And remember, if you're on the front lines, delivering patient care and protecting patient safety, stay vigilant because risk never sleeps.